Well, Nintendo has done it again. They never fail to disappoint the Nintendo community once again with their delays. And what I'm talking about, if you guys haven't been keeping up for the past couple of days, Nintendo had made an official announcement on their YouTube channel, a very professional announcement, that they will in fact be delaying Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild 2 up into spring 2023. Now, while the internet is upset about it, Nintendo fans probably breaking their consoles or whatever that they do when they're upset because of a delay, I'm quite fine with it. I'm okay with it. Yes, I'm okay with it. And there's a couple reasons why I'm okay with this. I'm totally fine with this delay. And to get into all this, to me, in my opinion, I think this is a smart move for Nintendo to delay this title. And I think it's not just for them to pretty much, I guess you could say, brush up a few things as far as the game is concerned. This is a strategic move. Now, before we get into all that, people got to understand, in my point of view, the best thing about this delay is, as all delays, and it seems like the Nintendo fans don't understand this, is that a delayed game eventually becomes a good game, especially if they work hard on it. Now, where have I gotten this quote from? And it seemed like no one remembers this quote. It seems like Nintendo fans should know this quote better than anybody. And that's from Shigeru Miyamoto himself, the father of Mario, or the father of Nintendo. This is an infamous quote that he said in an interview that seemed like Nintendo fans seem to not be able to wrap their heads around this at all. And he said in an interview, because I want to have to quote this for those of you guys who don't know anything about this. He said in an interview that a delayed game is eventually good, but a rushed game is forever bad. And I see no lies detected in this at all. No lies detected. And we have plenty of examples in the gaming industry where a game, when it's rushed through production, they end up getting bad results. And people will always remember how a game started, not how a game finished. It's how a game has been launched. And it will always be forever remembered and judged based on how it's launched. And I'll give you a perfect example. How about Sonic Boom, Rise of Lyrics on the Nintendo's Wii U? Now, that was a game that I was highly anticipating, and despite the fact that the game was rushed and it was bad, I had like a guilty pleasure when it came to the game. I kind of enjoyed it despite how bad the game was, but it became the butt of every Sonic game's joke. It's worse than Sonic the Hedgehog. Sonic 06, worse. How can you top Sonic 06 as far as being a bad Sonic game? And Rise of Lyrics proved that case. And the thing is, Big Red Button, they were rushed. Sega had rushed them, didn't give them the development time that they needed in order to convert all the assets over to the Wii U, was because they had developed it for next gen consoles of the time, which was the PS4, of course, the Xbox One, and of course it was going to come to the PC. But Nintendo and Sega had a exclusivity deal, and Sega told them, hey, put it over on the Wii U. And the Crysis engine just wasn't friendly to the Wii U, and they didn't give them time to iron things out. And as a result, it became a bad game. It was rushed. It was so bad. Oh my God, if I get into it, it's gonna be I'll take all day. I'll leave that for a separate video. But let's move on. How about the Avengers? The Avengers, that game launched terrible, and it's still a terrible game in my opinion. And I've been saying this for a very long time, that this game needed some more time to be ironed out, dished out. It needed more time to bake in that oven. And look at the results. Many people are pulling away from the Avengers game. And we cannot forget Fallout 76. Yes, Fallout 76 or Fallout in general, that franchise was held to such high acclaim. Everybody worshiped this game. This game series could never do any wrong. But I didn't never like Fallout anyway. But Fallout 76 proved that if you rush a title, you rush a product out, you're going to receive some type of backlash. And Fallout 76, there was a straw that broke the camel's back for Bethesda themselves. And no matter how much they update the game, Fallout 76 will always be remembered of how bad the game was. Now, of course, before we even get away from this, more examples, we have to look at the rush game of the generation, the rush game of this entire new generation, and that's Cyberpunk 2077. Cyberpunk was held to such high esteem. This game has been talked about for a couple of years. Everybody's been waiting for this. A lot of content creators been talking about this, and I felt kind of skeptical about it at some point during its development. And once the game officially came out, oh my God, all over the internet, it had became that meme. It had became that butt of the joke of the gaming industry as far as a release title is concerned. This is a perfect example of what a rush title looked like, and it still hasn't redeemed any of its quality or respect. And CD Projekt Red deserves every bit of backlash and criticism due to the fact is that they should have known better than that, and they've been they have received a lot of acclaim and respect from the community, and they disrespected them by rushing out this title. And the list goes on. I can go all day what a rush game looks like and the impact that it has on the game. It will always be remembered of how the game launched. It will never be remembered, despite we live in an era of patches, you know, to make a game better. But despite that, it's always going to be remembered how it launched. And Nintendo and Breath of the Wild is no different. Nintendo is smart. And which brings me to my second point. What I mean by it's a strategic move from Nintendo to even decide to go in this direction when it comes to delaying this game. Now, let's get into why it's been strategic on their point. Now, for instance, the thing is, Nintendo, when it comes to the Nintendo Switch, we all know right now that Nintendo Switch compared to the PS5 and the Xbox Series X is an underpowered console. Now, the thing is, the Switch been so successful because it's a hybrid console. It's both a console and it's both a handheld. And it's been doing them pretty well. And it's been quite powerful enough because at the time it was released, only the PS4 and the Xbox One was released. So a lot of third-party developers were able to port over, without any real issues, able to port over these titles over to Nintendo Switch. So he was able to get that high-quality AAA experience on the go. And that was the gimmick, and that is still the gimmick for the Nintendo Switch. Now we have the PS5 and the Xbox Series X. It's a whole new ball game. Nintendo Switch is way out of his league, and a lot of people is wondering, hey, when will Nintendo announce their next console? When are we going to get the next console for, you know, for them to even keep up with its competitors, or to even get those ports from the PS5 to the Xbox Series X in order for them to stay competitive, in order for people to still have that attractiveness to the Nintendo Switch, that alternative. Now, for this point, we got to talk about the new technology. Now, there's been rumors and been talks about new technology that Nintendo has been looking into when it comes to the Nintendo Switch, their current hardware. Now, what is this new technology I'm talking about? And it's pretty funny that this Nintendo Switch game that's coming out that's heavily reliant on this new technology, and that's Nintendo Switch Sports, which is the sequel to Nintendo Wii Sports. Now, what is this technology? Well, it looks like that the Nintendo Switch Sports is using this new technology called Fidelity FX Super Resolution Upscaling by AMD. Now, for those of you guys who aren't technological junkies like me, I kind of did some research and looked into it, and I just want to break this down to you guys in layman's terms. Now, the thing is, what is this tech? How does it work? And why is this such an important move? And how do you think this is going to relate to Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild releasing, Part 2 releasing for the Nintendo Switch? Well, to break it down with this technology allows the Nintendo Switch to run games at lower resolutions so they can run it at higher frame rates without any hardware. That means Nintendo doesn't have to drop a Nintendo Switch Pro right away or a Nintendo Switch 2 right away. They can use their current hardware to allow them to reduce the resolution while increasing the frame rate of the game. So can you imagine games like Breath of the Wild 1, if they implement this through a patch or something like that, it goes at 60 frames per second, or Platinum Games Astral Chains? It's a lot of different games that can go back and utilize this technology. And not only that, this technology still also allows them to upscale their games to 4K resolution without any needed new hardware at all. You just patch it in. So this is something that I believe that Nintendo is looking into to be able to increase the longevity to the Nintendo Switch until they're ready to release their next Nintendo Switch hardware, which I believe is right around the corner. I'm looking at a 2024 release, but this makes so much sense for The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild 2, because come on, think about it. Breath of the Wild 2, or Breath of the Wild in general, was such a leap in a different direction for Nintendo themselves when it comes to how they develop and design games. Breath of the Wild was a very open world, very expansive, and you could hardly ever experience any load times. Now, the thing that Breath of the Wild always had, and that I had an issue with, was frame rate. Despite how gorgeous, how open the world is, frame rate has always been an issue. Now, with Breath of the Wild 2, they decided to add in, of course, Nintendo never makes sequels without doing things to up the ante, to change or increase the gameplay experience. you know, with Breath of the Wild 2, Nintendo's going to do some nutty stuff in a good way. They're going to do something to I guess you could say, make the gaming experience even more impressive as far as the gameplay is concerned. So I think with Breath of the Wild 2, we can expect, because they did make an announcement, they did say that Breath of the Wild 2 is not only going to take place on the ground, it's also going to take place in the sky. So in order for them to even add extra levels or extra environments up in the air, you're going to need a console, or you're going to need something to be able to increase or inject into the Switch to increase that horsepower to be able to run any of that stuff. You know, so I think it's a perfect time, or I think this is a strategic decision by Nintendo. So by the time the game launches, this type of technology is well tested, and it can be implemented into Breath of the Wild 2. And not only that, maybe because it's delayed, that's what they're working on now, implementing this technology. So if we wanted to have the best experience as possible for the Breath of the Wild 2, I think this is a perfect time right now to delay this game into the spring of 2023 to make sure everything is ironed out, that the technology is right. And from what people played with Nintendo Switch Sports, they said this is a nice looking Nintendo title for something as simplistic as a sports game. So can you imagine that, and how that will work out for Nintendo's in Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild 2? I think that'd be pretty dope. So I think this is a smart move when it comes to Nintendo making the decision to delay this game. And of course, I think the third and final reason too is that, you know, if you think about the date they're talking about, is they talking about a 2023 spring release. And if you think about it, that is around the time that Breath of the Wild 1 was released, and the Nintendo Switch themselves. So this is a perfect anniversary release. They could, in fact, release a Nintendo Switch Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild 2 bundle pack. We just don't know, but I just think that it makes sense for them to do that if they're going to definitely push it to the spring. And if we say in spring, and we talking about the Nintendo Switch, it had launched in March, which is my birthday month. I know, my birthday month. So I think it's the perfect time for them to even make that launch. Now, before I even end this video, I know a lot of you guys are probably upset that I'm saying this, probably feel some type of way, you know, because you guys really wanted to play Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild 2. But I'll say this, especially you guys, those guys out there, you guys, I'm talking to you. Those of you who have a huge backlog of games that you haven't even completed on Nintendo Switch, and I'm a criminal for that one as well. I have a huge backlog. If you guys have a backlog, and I'm pointing to you, then hey, just focus on playing those games. You have a ton of games you can play to hold you off into the release of Breath of the Wild 2, because I damn sure have a whole lot of games. In fact, the Nintendo Switch still feel like a new console to me because of how many games that I have in my backlog that I haven't even opened out of the plastic just yet. So if those of you guys who have a backlog, get to it. Finish that backlog before that game come out. Like, how is it going to hurt you by waiting for this game? In fact, Nintendo's doing you a favor. So get on that backlog. That's right. Get on that backlog. I'm talking to you. And those of you who are just fiends and just clearing out every Nintendo Switch game that you have, I don't know what to say. I have no answers for you guys. I don't know. Go to the eShop and get some indie games or something like that, or acquire some new taste in genre or something like that to hold you off. I'm sorry, I don't have any answers. But Nintendo Switch so far this year have a nice catalog of games. I mean, so far we have Kirby, we have Triangle Strategy, and of course we have the Chrono Cross remaster that just released on the Nintendo Switch a couple of days ago. So we still ain't counting the rest of the year. You know, there's a bunch of titles that's coming out this year. I think this is enough to keep us busy and keep us pretty full walking into 2023. But that's pretty much wraps up my opinion about this whole delay when it comes to Nintendo Switch and Nintendo Breath of the Wild Part 2. I think it's going to be a great experience. I think when it comes to Nintendo, you have to have patience with them. This is one of their pillars when it comes to first-party franchises. And I think that you have to get accustomed to expect that there will be delays when it comes to a Zelda title. And it's for good reasons. Because at the end of the day, all the complaining you make, by the time the game come out, you guys will be giving this game high praises like you normally do with most Zelda games. So I definitely want to hear your thoughts. Let me know in the comment section below. Do you think this is a perfect opportunity for them to delay the game? So for whatever reasons, maybe because of the new technology that I mentioned that's created by AMD, or do you think that it just makes sense to just have it launch the spring of next year to meet that anniversary year of the release of the Switch and the original Breath of the Wild. I'd definitely like to hear your thoughts in the comment sections below. Are you anticipating this? If you liked the video, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. If you want to stay up to date with more news, and even if it's related to Nintendo, Legend of Zelda alike, hit that bell to be notified. This is MugenLord signing off. I'll see you Game Fiends later. Peace out.